Did you go to California last week? I saw you there. I watched the Aarti there at 9 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
So there
Okay.
I saw you. I thought, yeah,
That was me.
it looks like
Yeah,
so.
Okay. Just 2 minutes.
Radhe 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 Govinda Vrindavana Chanda Anata Nata Dinu Bandhu Radhe Govinda Vana Pursa Pundarikasha Loka Radhe Govinda Vrindavana Chanda Anata Nata Dinu Bandhu Radhe Govinda
Pandarinatha Panduranga.
Pandarinatha Panduranga Radhe Govinda Anathanatha Dinu Bandhu Radhe Govinda
Jai
Jai Jai Vitala Jai Hari Vitala Radhe Govinda Vrindavana Chanda Anathanatha Dinu Bandhu Radhe Govinda.
Wow. Wow.
Nice. Very good.
That's the word.
Any no more?
Oh.
Okay. Next time you'll sing again. Okay.
Okay.
How are you, Swami?
Kushaben. Fine. Everyone. Swami Bhaswatananda.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
I have been, in writing, I have been mentioning your name quite many times, but not in person, so
Yeah.
nice to see you.
Yeah. If you're nice to him, he may come down from time to time.
I had that in mind, that's what I told you to bring him here.
Yes. Yes.
No, all planned out.
Yeah.
We are very nice, Swamiji. We are here very nice, everyone's very nice.
She's
Yeah,
already
you
started
just picked
dancing
her up
now.
that.
No, we are really very nice, you were really fine, you were fine, that's nice.
Yeah.
Every one of us.
I hope I'll be useful to you.
You would. We'll make, we are doing everything. Janma.
Tava Gathamritam Tatra Jeevanam Kavivariditam Kavishakam Sarvanamangalam Shrivadagasam Okay, we're going to share the duties tonight.
I'll get my glasses.
Okay, he'll do some reading. You can ask questions of either one of us. I can make some comments, he can make some comments, although
You
he'll,
brought some books, our books.
yeah.
This
There's
one.
two copies of gospel and one of
Yes,
the
yeah,
diary.
The one she left to that.
Okay.
I will get them.
You want us to start any particular place?
And I think Auntie ordered it.
Is there
Oh,
any place to
Like
start?
Swamiji got it
Oh,
from.
yeah, this
No, I think
this
you
is
can
all
take it.
pre-ordered.
Anywhere?
Somebody needs them, yeah. Yeah, these are all pre-ordered, yes. So I need to, yeah.
Oh, good.
You can order later on, I will talk to you.
I thought someone was asking for this.
No.
No.
Swamiji got it.
Swami got it for me to give to someone.
Oh, got it, got it.
Excuse me, I have to pick them up anyway.
Our ping pong player. It goes till 8 o'clock, what time?
No, it's
Whatever time.
7:30.
Huh?
7:30 we said we'll start.
No, Swamiji
But it
said,
goes
till
up
what time,
till
whatever
what
time
time?
you want.
We have till 8:30.
Till 8:30, okay, we have 40 minutes. Yeah, and then you, feel free to ask questions anytime.
Anytime, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
This is I'll be reading a few paragraphs from the opening chapter, Master and Disciple. I start?
Yeah, yeah.
M. Humbly. How, sir, may we fix our minds on God? Master, repeat God's name and sing His glories, and keep holy company, and now and then visit God's devotees and holy people. The mind can't dwell on God if it is immersed day and night in worldliness, in worldly duties and responsibilities. It is most necessary to go into solitude now and then and think of God. To fix the mind on God is very difficult in the beginning, unless one practices meditation in solitude. When a tree is young, it should be fenced all around. Otherwise, it may be destroyed by cattle. To meditate, you should withdraw within yourself or retire to a secluded corner out of a forest. And you should always discriminate between the real and the unreal. God alone is real, the eternal substance. All else is unreal, that is, impermanent. By discriminating thus, one should shake off impermanent objects from the mind.
You say so? This first long conversation, and asked several questions of Sri Ramakrishna. The entire gospel is kind of a commentary on and elucidation of these questions and answers. We get everything in these, and we'll ask, I think, 4 different questions or something that give us the essence of the entire gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. The one thing that to me is most important is that there's no esoteric philosophy in any of this. You know, I sometimes think that we make a big mistake going all of this Jagat Mithya and everything, that the world is unreal and we're seeing nothing but Brahman, superimposition, all of that. This is so practical. This is the beauty of it. It's so practical, and we all know how there's nothing here that we don't know how to do. Can you read that again? What is this? The things that he says. These are the essence of spiritual life is right here.
Repeat God's name and sing His glories and keep holy company. And now and then visit God's devotees and holy people. The mind, but do we need it?
It's big, but there's not
Live
Zoom,
streaming.
Zoom.
Oh,
Stream also. Sorry.
The mind can't dwell on God if it is immersed day and night in worldliness, in worldly duties and responsibilities. It is most necessary to go into solitude now and then and think of God. To fix the mind on God is very difficult in the beginning, unless one practices meditation in solitude. When a tree is young, it should be fenced all around. Otherwise, it may be destroyed by cattle.
Maharaj, what does it mean when a tree is young?
When we are still in the beginning of our spiritual life.
And how long does that last?
For people like me, several lives long.
So,
Yeah, question. Yeah.
so it's like when we say solitude, it's like that's one thing which I don't know. This now we don't get much of a solitude where we go and meditate.
Yeah.
So, in your opinion, how do we do it, and what should we be done?
Okay.
Oh,
Just
We can,
you can switch.
yeah, we can.
Like when you
made it easier for me.
The music chair.
Okay, Sri Ramakrishna, you know, he loved these little play on words. He used to say koni boni moni.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a very nice way of understanding it. If we can go into some really secluded place in the forest, Havana, Boni in Bengali. If we can go into the forest, that means real seclusion. Then this will be fantastic. If we can't, then we find a little corner, Koni, even within our own house. We can go there. But ultimately, everything is the mind.
Money.
Now, this is, I think, one of the most important teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. He'll say, really, with regard to almost everything in spiritual life, mon niye kota, he has this expression, mon niye kota. Everything is a question of the mind. Where is the mind? This is the most important thing. If we're in the middle of the forest, and the mind is thinking about our job and our family and everything, that's not solitude. If we're in the middle of the busy train station, and mind is fixed on God, then that's also a type of solitude. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, he really literally meant solitude. He literally meant solitude, if possible. He would tell his devotees, even, you're a little bit older, you're retired, you have enough money, fine, build a little house somewhere a little bit far away.
Only today morning we read.
Tell me.
Today morning we read a portion of
You read it, yeah. And from time to time, go as long as you can, and immerse yourselves. See, solitude gives us a chance to forget everything else. To forget the world, forget our duties, our obligations, temporarily, of course, to forget everything. But solitude has another aspect to it. I talk about this all of the time because I made a science of solitude. I practiced solitude for a number of years. That I lived alone, and I've told the story many times. Many of you know that I lived for 1 year in India, and I decided not to keep a mirror, and I just stayed in 2 small rooms, so I wouldn't even see my face, and not mixing with people or anything. After a while, we begin to forget that we have a physical presence in the world. We start to feel we're just a conscious entity that is open, we're just consciousness open to the world. This whole universe is dwelling within that consciousness, and we start to forget our physical presence. Because I have a theory. You ready for this theory? False identification, we talk about false identification with the body. This is mostly because of other people.
Yes.
Because we know other people are looking at us. As soon as they look at us, we think that, oh, they're looking at me, then they're looking at the body. If we spend a lot of time in solitude, and we lose that, we start to forget. And we can even go out walking on the street, and we'll almost forget that we have a physical body. So there's a psychological side to solitude, other than the practical side. Practical side, of course, that no disturbances, we can spend more time in our spiritual practice, our meditation. Solitude doesn't mean that we can't bring books and do spiritual reading, even watch these lectures, video things, YouTube things and everything. But that we're alone. Somehow just not having a second person there to make us feel like we're physical human beings. Somehow just being alone, not having another person there, it changes the whole way, because we see ourselves from the outside in through the eyes of other people. Then we start to see ourselves from inside out. The change takes place. I noticed that. I spent some period where I really fell in love with solitude. I didn't want to talk to people or mix with people or anything. It's not good to be antisocial, but it was a very helpful period for me that way. So actual solitude, if possible. Otherwise, even within the house, say you can't go someplace, kids go out to school, do you have a little spare time? Have a little corner of the room, have a little shrine room. This is also a type of solitude. But ultimately, it's solitude is within the heart, within one's own mind. This is the real solitude. We have to develop that. And if we can learn to live within that, see, what's the easiest way to remember God? Repeat the name. It's the easiest way to repeat the name. It's a constant reminder. And we can form that habit very easily of repeating the name so that we don't even think about it. It's constantly reminding us. And again, so where's the mind? If the mind is thinking of God, we're living in God. One of my favorite verses in Gita is in chapter 12, that if the mind, see, as your friend says, fix the mind on God. If the mind is fixed on God, intellect is fixed on God, he says, then you'll live in God. So you fix your mind in me, you'll live in me. We say, well, I want to live in God. How do I do it? Just remembering God. And we're living within that divine presence. Atta Udvamnas, that this from this moment on, the samshaya, there's no doubt that if we can do that, fix the mind on God. So all of these things, solitude, is repeating the name of God. Then holy company. What's the value of holy company? Maharaj, tell them a
That
little
is
bit.
what I'm
Holy
enjoying now.
Now, come on,
Yeah.
let me enjoy some.
Yeah.
Let me enjoy some. Because he has had the privilege of a tremendous holy company. He joined the order quite early and had the company of many great souls, great swamis of our order in Bangalore and other places. So he really benefited very much from that.
I really don't have, I really don't have much to say because the people whom I associated with holiness when I was very young almost never spoke about spiritual life or about God or about Sri Ramakrishna, even though this Ramakrishna ashram was our second home. But what must have influenced me subconsciously was the way they went about their lives. Very simple, very open, and it was not just purity. Purity is something personal. Holiness is what I would say. Holiness is something that you exude, that influences others, who are especially those who are receptive. And I think that it is because of their holiness that a person like me could turn to spiritual life.
Who were some of the swamis that
I can't pinpoint anybody. It was the whole group of swamis and brahmacharis.
Swamiji, in Bhagavad Gita, Swami Tapasyanandaji.
Yes.
So I read today said the best offering you can do is your japa to God. That's the best offering you can do. And
Yes.
second thing is, holy company. Swami Shivananda, when some, visitor will come, Swami give us instruction, say, live here, watch us.
Yeah.
See? So that is
Mahapurush Maharaj even
Mahapurush
said
Maharaj,
our
yes.
lives are Upanishads.
Yes. That's what it is. I think it makes a lot of sense actually.
No, I can't read.
In second volume of Swami Swananji's reminiscences that has come out. Yeah. And we see how people were just elevated in his company, and that majestic bhava that he had. Just people would just be lifted up by that. Holy company has a couple of special benefits. One is that the mind becomes very quiet. I found, and many people say that mind becomes very quiet in the presence of these great souls who are so quiet inside. Now Swami Swanandaji, his mind was so active with all sorts of plans and ideas and expansion and everything, but part of the mind was always still and silent. We all felt that. And through holy company, we get the greatest benefit in spiritual life is conviction. We get conviction that those who dedicate their lives to the spiritual life and to an ideal, that how much joy it brings them, how much satisfaction, how much contentment comes from leading that type of life, regardless of whether we get some type of illumination or some samadhi, forget about that, but any vision, anything. Just the joy that comes from leading that type of life of dedication. See, the Swamis that come from India to this country, especially in the early days, we sometimes forget what they've sacrificed. Leaving their country, leaving the holy company of brother monks and everything, and how they dedicate their whole lives to the work in this country, and almost never thinking that, oh, am I happy here? Do I like this? Do I want to go someplace else? Every thought is, how do I build up the center? How do I spread these teachings of Vedanta? How do I spread this wonderful personality of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother and Swamiji, direct disciples and everything? So we see that tremendous dedication, that sacrifice, that ability to not care about their own personal lives, that selflessness. And this is so inspiring, and we start to feel that everything we read about spiritual life, the joy of spiritual life, blessings of spiritual life, we see a living example. And we say, oh, that one can really build up one's life to
This
that
is what
level.
spiritual life became real to me.
Yes.
It was not
Yeah.
for something to be read about in
Yeah.
books.
Yeah.
That is like sometimes when we hear their stories, it so inspires that there can be so much of troubles, but there is joy which they find. Like
There's no joy like a life of dedication, a life of just seeking our own enjoyment and everything. It'll have its ups and downs. There'll be some. It's not a terrible life. There'll be some nice experiences and everything. But those who lead a perfect selfless life, they really can get some deep satisfaction. Yeah, and we see this. We see this with these great monks and Pravajikas also, who dedicate their lives to this ideal. That how much they benefit personally from that, even though they don't do it to benefit personally. That's not their motive. But a life of selflessness brings so much joy and contentment and peace that we see that living example, and it inspires us, and we try to follow it. We try to emulate that. So there's nothing compares to Holy Company.
And also, Maharaj, not in that ashram, it was not. This holiness is not restricted to monastics. I also seen, so-called householders
Yeah.
who were literally living like lilies in the mud. When you go to such an ashram, you see these examples.
it was which ashram? In Bangalore?
Yeah, for me it was Bangalore ashram, but there are other ashrams, Chennai, and many ashrams in Bengal, where great souls have lived. So you could see a ripeness which you might very easily call holiness in those householder devotees.
Swami, I have one question. Since you mentioned the book of Swami
Yes.
Sarada, you are so, I mean, I admire of him, and you're so close to him. You didn't write anything in that book.
I did.
I didn't see your name in that book.
You didn't?
I didn't see your name. I mean,
I think do you have it here?
I will
Is it-
bring it tomorrow. I got a book as a
I
compliment.
wrote a long thing. Mine may be the longest.
I don't know. I mean, yes,
In the first part.
maybe first
In
one.
volume one.
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm
It's
gonna
in
volume
volume one.
second.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay, volume first.
I
don't
wrote a
have it.
very long thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have to get that one because I got a volume second.
Oh, you got the
two-
second volume.
Two complimentary
Yeah,
copies.
yeah.
So it was your name was not. I said, my goodness, Swami's.
Yeah.
Mayuganand is there. Yaganand is there, and few other sadhus are there. But
I wrote a lot of things, and
Yeah,
there are a lot of
wonderful.
things that I didn't have time to write.
This
I had
is
a
by,
lot
by,
of-
by monastics and by devotees. So I thought, you will have some. I will have to read the first one.
Okay.
Yeah, because you talk so good about, so.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you, in the time that you took to live in solitude,
Yes.
you said you forgot about yourself after a period of time. So in your experience, how long did that take?
It was hardly noticeable. It's a very gradual type of thing. But every once in a while, see, I had a funny thing happen When I lived in Kolkata for a year as a student, so I rented a place, 2 small rooms in the house, and I did it by myself. I became very close with our Swami Lokeshwaranandaji, so a few times a week I would go and visit him. I had a counselor or advisor that I had to see every once in a while. Otherwise, I was by myself. And I cooked for myself, I did everything, and I didn't mix with people too much. And every once in a while, I would go to the Institute of Culture, and they would all start laughing. Why are they laughing? And I would see from the kerosene stove that I had soot all over myself with my hands, and I got it in my face or something, and had no idea. Everything. Because I didn't keep a mirror. So, but it's a gradual type of thing. If we go for a while, because there's no reason for us to think about look at the difference. If you wake up in the morning and you know you're not going to go out that day and nobody's going to see you, how much do you bother about, combing your hair or your physical appearance, or those who use makeup, if they use makeup, or anything like that? It doesn't make any difference. And so we kind of lose that feeling that we're physical objects in a room. We have a physical presence. The existentialist philosophers used to talk about the gaze of the other. The gaze of the other that turns us into an object. That we feel there's something almost demeaning. People stare at us. Huh? What are you staring at? Yeah. Almost as if to say, that's not me that you're staring at. What are you looking at and everything? So anyhow, it's a gradual thing. I don't know if one day I woke up and realized that it happened, but you just, after a while, you start to realize that you're not thinking yourself that way.
It's a little confusing, right, Swami? As a child, you really don't care. In fact, if you look
No.
at children, they don't really care. You look at the mirror and comb your hair,
No.
And then
Because everything is outgoing. They're not introspective in that way. It's a good thing and it's also a negative thing. We have to learn to be introspective. But they're also just perfectly natural. They don't care what they look like, what other people think of them and everything. That's the balagala. We want to become like that to a certain extent. Yeah. Like the child, they have a different type of ego. They don't have the same type of ego that we have. So worried about what other people think of us and how we look to them and are we impressing them? We waste so much of our energy with these types of thoughts. Most people, not everyone, of course.
But Swami, on the other hand, Swami, of course for 1 year or 6 months is okay. But on the other hand, Swami Vivekananda has said, this world is a gymnasium. We have to, be interacting with other people. Only then we'll know, how we are evolving, how we are, learning how to tolerate people, how to, handle these situations. So how would that fit in that kind of thing then?
Yeah, Thakur doesn't say everybody has to do this all of the time. His point is that
Once in a while. Yeah.
every once in a while,
Yeah, once in a while.
as long as we can, whenever it's convenient to do it, there's a great benefit from it. Otherwise, of course, we benefit even from the criticism of other people. We get our rough edges, or we get our ego bruised a little bit, and we learn our lessons and everything, of course. That's also important.
So Swamiji, if you think of what, it's like basically you're training your mind to not to think about the body and think about something else. It's like when you say about the body, it's like
The thing with solitude is that we're not training it. It naturally happens. And we start to understand how unnatural it is. That because other people, they're looking at us, that, first thing we say, oh, am I dressed okay? Looking, did I forget to, comb my hair? We start to think of ourselves in those terms and forget about ourselves as the self. As this pure awareness, as this Sakshi, this witness.
So Swamiji, at some point, like we are trying, and so at some point whether that is indeed becomes a regular thing, does that happen with just, I understand trying has to be there, but does that just happen with trying, or there is karma or Thakur's blessings involved, without which you cannot cross certain levels?
Yeah, of course, we have to have a little bit of this samskara there, because mean, there'll be some people that they'll go into solitude and they'll just be bored to death, or they'll panic, or they won't know what to do, and so we have to be a little bit prepared if we're going to get the benefit of solitude. It's not necessarily an automatic thing, but if we're a little introspective and a little meditative, and it's an acquired taste. And not for everybody. Some people really don't like it. They get more benefit out of holy company. Other people get more benefit out of solitude. Not everyone, is suited to that.
Temperament, how
That's a
somebody,
different
how
temperament also.
somebody is kind of.
Yeah.
So what was your day like?
Those days, I was working on the translation.
Okay.
So I spent most of my time with my head in a book and working on that. And then I would cook my food. And I had a lot of time for meditation. And so I did a lot of my spiritual practice. Days would just go by. And then for the last month, I finished all my work that I went there for. I really went into a little retreat. The people I knew at the Institute of Culture, they went on some pilgrimage. So for like a month I didn't go there. So I would just spend as much time as I could with some spiritual reading and meditation and japa and everything. And I would cook my meals and I would eat my food and the day would go by. It was very joyful. I really
What was your state of mind at that time? Like you said you would lose track of
just
time.
quiet. The mind would be just very quiet, and nothing, no big spiritual breakthrough. And I didn't have, don't over romanticize the whole thing. But it was just a very rewarding period for me. It was very rewarding, and I read this. It was called Otitya Sriti, the English story of an epoch.
Yes.
Swami Shraddhanand wrote about the life of Swami Virajanand. It
Vijayanagar.
was the first Bengali book long Bengali book that I read cover to cover.
It is
Because I was learning Bengali at that time.
Not a translation, I think I have in English.
Yeah, it's called Story of an Epic.
Yes.
What's the name in Bengali, the book?
Otitya Sriti,
Otitya Sriti.
Memories of Days Gone By, something like
I
that.
have in
Yeah.
English, yeah.
About Swami Virajanand. It's a wonderful book.
Mm.
So it's not like the whole day long I was in meditation and jump and everything. I would spend time reading, doing my spiritual reading and things, and I'd have to go out shopping, I'd have to spend time cooking and everything, but I didn't talk to people. I didn't mix with other people. That was also an important aspect of it. So it was very joyful.
See, looking at, our eyes don't look at us. Unless we look in the mirror, our own eyes don't look how we look.
Yeah,
It's exactly, as you say, it's exactly the other people,
yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
make us to.
There was a very interesting incident in the life of Swamiji. It took place in the Pasadena house. Did you remember?
Mirror.
When they,
Yes.
one of the, I
was
forget
standing.
who it was, one of the meat sisters, she saw Swamiji looking himself in the mirror,
Yeah.
and she thought, oh, he too has his vanity,
Yeah.
something like that. And then he said something, and you remember exactly how strange it is to see this physical body, something.
Yeah.
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 What did he say?
He
He said-
recognizes his face.
Yeah,
He did not know how he looked.
Yes, I don't know how
Yeah.
I look.
yeah,
He did not know
He
how
looked again.
looked,
I
and,
don't know how he
uh,
looked, yeah.
yeah. And Swami Brahmananda, one time he was supposed to sign his name, and he said, he couldn't remember what his name was.
Ah.
Complete lack of identification with any person.
I heard
Yeah.
Swami Tapasyanandaji
Mm.
was one day calling his own name.
Oh,
Yeah. And people found it strange,
yeah.
and when they pointed it out to him, he was a little embarrassed. But they say it's an indication of maybe for a very short period
Mm.
he had completely lost his
Identity,
self-consciousness.
identity,
Did you know him?
No,
Tapasya?
no. I had 2 or 3 batchmates in my training center who came from Chennai.
So Swamiji, just a question, like, when like us, if we are in solitude, our mind sometimes feels better, and when we are holy company of it. But when we come to the reality of the world, the mind is, that's when we know how we are. Like sometimes it's like you think you are something, and when you come to the people there, your mind reacts in a different way. So it's like, how do you train it from the solitude to the reality?
Unreality.
It's like the worldly.
No, seriously, I think something remains, something lingers. Is once we have some sense of ourselves as something other than this superficial appearance that we have, that remains with us. We'll identify with everything and have our old relationships and everything, but something of that doesn't disappear. That stays with us, and it's something very important.
It's a process, right? It'll gradually, you'll see the changes, or like,
Yeah.
right, like the transformation from the solitude to the.
Yeah. The solitude, this is really the definition of enlightenment in the Sankhya system, the Kaivalya.
M. Humbly. How ought we to live in the world? Master, do all your duties, but keep your mind on God. Live with all, with wife and children, father and mother, and serve them. Treat them as if they were very dear to you, but know in your heart of hearts that they don't belong to you. A maidservant in the house of a rich man performs all the household duties, but her thoughts are fixed on her own home in her native village. She brings up her master's children as if they were her own. She even speaks of them as my Ram or my Hari. But in her own mind, she knows very well that they don't belong to her at all. The tortoise moves about in the water, but can you guess where her thoughts are? They are on the bank, where her eggs are lying. Do all your duties in the world, but keep your mind on God. If you enter the world without first cultivating love for God, you will be entangled more and more. You will be overwhelmed with its danger, its grief, its sorrows. And the more you think of worldly things, the more you will be attached to them. First, rub your hands with oil and then break open the jackfruit. Otherwise, they'll be smeared with its sticky milk. First, secure the oil of divine love and then set your hands to the duties of the world. But one must go into solitude to attain this divine love. To get butter from milk, you must first let it set into curd in a secluded spot. If it is too much disturbed, milk won't turn into curd. Next, you must put aside all other duties, sit in a quiet spot, and churn the curd. Only then do you get butter.
We have to remember the context of this also. If we know M's state of mind when he came, and we know his situation at home and everything, that his mind was so disturbed when he came to Sri Ramakrishna, and he was so unhappy at home. His mother had died, and his father remarried, and his older brothers weren't interested in spiritual life. They kind of made fun of him, and he wanted to leave. He couldn't live at home anymore, and was even contemplating suicide. We know all of these things. So Thakur was telling him these things, almost as if he knew exactly what was in M's mind. Of course, he gives these teachings later. These are very standard teachings, how to live in the world and everything. But if we can imagine how he sounded to the M at that time. Because he felt like he couldn't live at home anymore. So this was so pertinent to his situation, to live in the world as if they all belong to him, as if they're his very own, his near and dear ones, but to know that they didn't really belong to him. I sometimes think this example of the maidservant in the rich man's home is the best. I think for those who have their worldly duties and attachments and everything, I think it's really such a good example, because it gives us both sides. One side is how temporary, transient everything is, relationships and everything in this world. Those who are husband and wife and children and parents to us now, will they be the same in the next lifetime? Were they that before? Who knows who was who and all of that? And who will live and who will die and who will be separated from. We don't know any of these things. And yet we feel such a strong sense of attachment. So this is that one side. The other side is that we do have something permanent and lasting and unchanging. And when he talks about the maidservant knows that she has her own village and her own family and everything, that means God. That means this the real abode, the permanent abode that will never be lost to us, but we have to discover it. This is the paradox in spiritual life, that it never lost to us, but for most people, they'll get so entangled in the household of the person they're working for that they forget that they have their own place in everything. When Swamiji first came to Sri Ramakrishna and sang that here we're wandering in this world like strangers wearing a strange guise. That we see, look at the two of us. We make the mistake, we think we're monks of the Ramakrishna order. Now we are, and we're proud of it also. But that also is an external thing. That's also an external thing. And the more we identify with that, the more we become like everybody else. We become enamored with the persona, with the external part. There was a great French philosopher, Sartre. I studied this existential philosophy earlier. He was a wonderful writer, very brilliant person. And he talks about the waiter in a restaurant. And he sees this waiter who does everything just like a waiter, with the towel over his arm, the way he holds everything. And then he said it occurred to him that he had become a waiter. That was exactly who he was. He was a waiter. And we want to get to the point where we know that this is just some temporary external covering. That this is we're like actors on a stage. That when this play is over, we'll take off the costume and we'll be who we were, always were, the whole time. That we shouldn't forget it. He wrote another play. And there was a very famous actor named Keane, a French actor. And he was so brilliant as an actor, and when he played a role, he became that role. That when he wasn't acting, he didn't know who he was. No sense of himself at all. And we see it happen with people, sometimes they retire. Whole lifetime, I'm a lawyer. Whole lifetime, I'm a lawyer. I'm a doctor. I'm an electrician. Whole lifetime. Then one day they wake up, what are you? I don't know. I'm retired. I used to be this, I used to be that. So we have to know who we are after we peel off the external coverings and have some sense of that as rooted in the divine, as inseparable from the divine, as having that as our real nature, our real home. Nitya Niketoni is our real Niketa. It's where we really live. And we forget. We've been sent out to play. We have all these beautiful songs, Ram Prasad songs that Thakur said. We've been sent out to play like little children. And we forget Mother And then at some point, we get bored with our toys and we yell, mother, 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 and she comes.
In fact, something like this is something like what you said about retirement. This happened for the month I had nothing to do in Germany. All my work was taken away
Oh.
and I had nothing to do,
Oh.
and things were being done differently, and you had to watch it. What you have done 15 years will be undone in 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's a good example, I mean, in a way, to be taken away.
Oh, this detachment, this detachment is a trick they play on us in the order.
Oh, really?
I've seen it so many times. I'm joking when I say trick, but
Yeah.
I remember one instance I remember. We had one Swami, his name is Nikhil Maharaj. He was in Dhaka Center. You know him? He was sent to Habiganj. We know Habiganj, it's
Yeah.
Swami Swaminji's place. And he worked day and night. He worked very hard, very capable Swami. And to build a place for the sadhus to stay, build a student hostel, build a temple there and everything. Almost the day that he was finished with everything, he was transferred to Chittigaon.
Yeah, like our Atmarupanand.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
Atmarupanand.
yeah,
Yeah,
in one day, I mean,
yeah.
10
Or another, Swami Lokeshwaranandji. Yeah, this is a wonderful thing. You talk about
What happened to our relegation? What did-
detachment. He started this small students' home, a place called Patori Ghata in Calcutta, that developed into, then after a while they bought a plot of land in a place that they started to call Narendrapur.
Yeah,
Then
blind
the-
school and all that.
And he built it up into one of the most important, finest institutions, educational institutions in all of India. And did tremendous village slum work in the villages, and had a blind boys' school, and a very high standard, it was a fantastic organization, just ideal. He put his heart and soul into it. And one day he was called to Bellarmine, to the headquarters, and they told him there was some problem, Institute of Culture, the one Swami had left, and they said, we're transferring you to the Institute of Culture. So without even going back to Narendrapur, he went straight there and said, you send my few things there. And just like that, he took up his work and everything. So
But Swami, is it done deliberately to teach how to be detached for them, or you just?
in those
practice it?
cases, it wasn't, not
Yeah,
deliberate.
Sometimes.
Sometimes
yeah,
we see
yeah.
is some of our young swamis, they're getting a little bit too popular or a little too attached to something, that they will be sent to some other
Oh.
place.
Okay.
Headquarters will keep a sharp eye, and they'll see a little bit of danger for this young sadhu, that now he's been in this position, that he's starting to feel a little too important, that it's not good for his spiritual life, they will transfer. So that does happen. In the case of Swami Lokeshwaranandji, he was such a capable Swami, and it was such an important place, Institute of Culture. So that
And
was,
Swami
And some
Atmarupanand,
political thing was going on
political
that time.
things,
that's
different
right.
things going on. Swami Atmarupananda,
same thing.
there was
I
such a
think.
need, and Grants
Yeah.
was going through a
Yeah.
difficult period.
Mhm.
Yeah, so no, it wasn't because they were trying to teach him any lessons, it was because they respected his
But the
capability.
thing, there has to be some time.
Yeah, it's a lesson to us.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what it was.
Yeah,
Do
so
not
we
be
see that
detached.
detachment and everything, yeah.
Very good.
If you find a good place to stop, you can do that, then we can have a couple songs before we end.
Yeah. Further, by meditating on God in solitude, the mind acquires knowledge, dispassion, and devotion. But the very same mind goes downward if it dwells in the world. In the world, there is only one thought, enjoyment and money.
Yeah, so the Holy Company has the opposite side to it. That we have to be very cautious about avoiding any type of tamasic, rajasic type of company. And when I was asking Swamiji in the beginning, this early stages, for most of us, the early stage is a full lifetime.
Mm.
So Thakur says with holy company, he doesn't say in the beginning. He says one should always try to keep holy company. And this small plant, when it gets big, you can tie even an elephant to it, you can go anywhere. That's not for us to even think about. Now we have to think about trying to grow the plant a little bit. That the moment we start to think, oh, I'm safe, I can go anywhere, mix with any people, I won't be affected, and then we're letting ourselves open for big disaster. So I remember Swami Ashokanandaji, one of the things he said, he was talking about the beginning stage, and he said, don't think that this is a small thing to be a beginner in spiritual life, it's a great thing. And it can go all the way up to almost the top of the ladder, still the beginning stage. When we reach that higher stage, it's anuraga, and all of those things, that's very close to that state of realization. So we shouldn't feel bad if we still have to worry about protecting ourselves, keeping good company, avoiding bad company, and all of that. These are just common sense things that we all have to do.
He said, I can't reproduce the words, but he said, if you have decisively turned to spiritual life, it means your soul is aspiring after the infinite. What more do you want?
The seed has been sown. I mean, the seed has been put, so you have to kind of, it has to grow, but we're nurturing it. Swami, by the way, you are a gospel class in Washington, D.C., and there are 5 devotees that asked me to get the gospel. So Kumar had only 2 of them.
Oh.
So 3 more have to wait until he said he would, get. So it's all your gospel class.
It's my fault.
Not for that's a good thing. You inspired it because these people never had gospel,
Yeah.
And Umesh, every time Umesh talk to somebody, read gospel.
Yeah.
We always say, all the time. So he convinced 5 people to read gospel,
Yeah.
and then your class, yes.
Yeah. No, I really feel that this is the one
Yes.
single most
Yes.
valuable book that we have.
Yes. Yeah, we
Yeah.
still, I mean, after
It's
33
most-
years.
You'll find everything there.
Yes.
Everything
We
there.
read every day. I mean, even
Yeah.
after that, we read.
Yeah, it's a good habit, to read a little bit every day. Yeah.
So Umesh said, if you want only one book, read gospel,
Yeah.
buy gospel,
Yeah. Right.
So, I mean,
Right.
this was a good thing, but, anyway, Kumar, I will remind him, maybe next Swami comes from
Mhm.
Washington DC, we'll bring more. So we'll find out, we'll do that, Jayama.
Okay, then we'll close. Om Niranjanam Nityamanam Virupam Bhaktanukam Vikrama Ishavasaram Parameshanidhyam Tam Ramakrishna Shirasam Namami. Devilina, can you sing a couple of songs? You want
Hey, come a bit
Microphone?
closer to the-
Or she can sit here. No need to change the attitude.
तुम ही ब्रह्म हो
রূপধর বিজিত কনক কাম, তুমি নর রূপধর বিজিত কনক কাম, তুমি ব্রহ্ম রাম কৃষ্ণ, তুমি কৃষ্ণ, তুমি রাম, তুমি ব্রহ্ম রাম কৃষ্ণ। অপার করুণা সিন্ধু, তুমি দেব দীনবন্ধু, অপার করুণা সিন্ধু, তুমি দেব দীনবন্ধু, যাচে ইন্দু কৃপা বিন্দু চরণে করি প্রণাম, যাচে ইন্দু কৃপা বিন্দু চরণে করি প্রণাম, তুমি ব্রহ্ম রাম কৃষ্ণ, তুমি কৃষ্ণ, তুমি রাম, তুমি বিষ্ণু, তুমি জিষ্ণু, প্রভু বিষ্ণু প্রাণারাম, তুমি বিষ্ণু, তুমি জিষ্ণু, প্রভু বিষ্ণু প্রাণারাম, তুমি ব্রহ্ম রাম কৃষ্ণ।
God is very nice.
Well done.
মঙ্গল মূর্তি মঙ্গলা আসিল, ভুবন ভরিল সুখে, দুঃখ নিশা কাটিল, সুখ রবি হাসিল, উৎসব ধরণী বুকে। মঙ্গল মূর্তি মঙ্গলা আসিল, ভুবন ভরিল সুখে, দুঃখ নিশা কাটিল, সুখ রবি হাসিল, উৎসব ধরণী বুকে। অমঙ্গল যত হলো আজি অবসান, মঙ্গল মন্ত্রে জাগিল অবশ প্রাণ, মঙ্গল মঙ্গল সংঘ মঙ্গল করে গান, অন্তর নাচে পুলকে। দুঃখ নিশা কাটিল, সুখ রবি হাসিল, উৎসব ধরণী বুকে। মঙ্গল মূর্তি মঙ্গলা আসিল, ভুবন ভরিল সুখে, দুঃখ নিশা কাটিল, সুখ রবি হাসিল, উৎসব ধরণী বুকে। মঙ্গল বরশিল মঙ্গলা মা আমার, হৃদি শত দলে আসন করো রে তার, পাদ অর্ঘ্য দাও পদে উপহার, বন্দনা করো রে মাকে। দুঃখ নিশা কাটিল, সুখ রবি হাসিল, উৎসব ধরণী বুকে। মঙ্গল মূর্তি মঙ্গলা আসিল, ভুবন ভরিল সুখে, দুঃখ নিশা কাটিল, সুখ রবি হাসিল, উৎসব ধরণী বুকে। মঙ্গল মূরতি মঙ্গলা আসিল, মঙ্গল মূরতি মঙ্গলা আসিল, মঙ্গল মূরতি মঙ্গলা আসিল।
Who wrote that?
This is Chandika
Chandika
Nadu.
Nadu, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't sung it in such a long time. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense, this bhajan, you know. Yeah. This is longer than that. I think in the tape I have much
They
longer.
repeat it twice.
Oh, it's very much longer. It sounds like, yeah.